Chapter 1. Sunrise on Kauai, where calm meets code. It's just before sunrise on the north shore of Kauai, and the waves are rolling in with their usual rhythmic certainty. The air is still, soft, and untouched, except for the quiet sound of feet moving over packed sand. Not many people are awake at this hour, but Mark Zuckerberg is. Not in a boardroom, not in a data center, but here, standing barefoot at the edge of the Pacific, watching the horizon begin to glow. This is how his mornings begin now, not with an inbox or an algorithm, but with salt water, sun, and silence. His island estate, nestled within hundreds of acres of privately owned land, remains out of view. Guarded by natural ridges, thick vegetation, and a layer of digital privacy that rivals anything Meta ever built. It's where he lives most of the time these days, not hiding, but choosing peace. There's something about Kauai that changed him. It's not that he's given up the mission. If anything, he's more locked in than ever. But his rhythm has shifted. Instead of racing to headquarters, he hikes trails with his dog. Instead of traffic, he has chickens crossing the dirt path toward the garden. Before anyone in Palo Alto even opens their laptops, he's already stretched, swam, and sketched out the core thoughts that will shape Meta's next steps. Because in that early morning island air, things come through clearer. He isn't alone. Every now and then, a friend joins for the first hour, another founder, a creative type, or one of the engineers who flew in to brainstorm something off-grid. There are no suits here, no name badges, just bare feet, open notebooks, and the kind of conversations that don't happen in fluorescent boardrooms. The first light of the day isn't filtered through a Zoom screen. It hits their faces directly as they talk about neural networks, avatar identity, or the ethics of synthetic memory. Kauai has become his lab in its own right. There's a small pavilion just beyond the tree line, a shaded wooden structure built into the land with no real entrance, just open sides and a long stone bench. That's where he checks in, not on Instagram or WhatsApp, but with his team. A custom setup built with Meta's internal tools and silent mode AI assistants lets him review updates, respond to flagged issues, and steer without disrupting the island's quiet. The balance is deliberate, productive without the frenzy. But it's not just about work. That's the misunderstanding a lot of people still have. Zuckerberg didn't come to Hawaii to unplug. He came to build something different, something more intentional. And the land itself is part of that. There's food grown in his garden, water pulled from underground, solar roofs that power the compound. It's not about being off the grid, it's about owning the grid. And yet, the irony is that while he's never been more private, he's also never been more present. No public live streams, no flashy announcements, just a quiet pattern of creation. He still reads the news, he still runs Meta, but the headlines don't define the day, the ocean does. So while the world continues to debate him, his power, his past, his platforms, he's here, breathing, building, preparing. The mornings in Kauai are more than a wellness routine, they're a reset. They're where the long game begins, not with a product drop, but with a clear mind, a surfboard leaning against a wall, and the sound of the sea reminding him that everything, even legacy, begins in the quiet. And when the sun finally rises and the rest of the world logs on, Mark Zuckerberg is already 3 hours deep into his day, calm, focused, and already building tomorrow. Chapter 2. Fortress Meta, inside his AI command center. The sea breeze fades by mid-morning, and Mark Zuckerberg trades the soft rustle of palm trees for something sharper, pixels, data, and the electric hum of a different kind of ecosystem. It's here, just a short walk from his main residence on Kauai, that a very different kind of space opens up. Tucked behind minimalist wooden doors and disguised by native flora is what insiders now casually refer to as Fortress Meta. It's not flashy, it's not large, but inside, it's where Zuckerberg thinks about the next 10 years, sometimes the next 100. The space is part AI command center, part meditation cave, and part future-proof bunker. Natural light spills through skylights designed to mimic circadian cycles. The air is temperature-controlled, but not cold. On one end, a wall of screens, muted, responsive, adapting to voice input and eye movement. On the other, simple wooden benches and a long table where Mark sits for hours, barefoot, surrounded by a few hand-picked collaborators flown in from Reality Labs or Meta's AI group. This is not where content moderation policy gets hammered out or where investor decks are finalized. This is where ideas evolve, where Zuckerberg, unbothered by media optics or boardroom choreography, maps out a post-phone future. And in 2025, that means one thing: AI. Not just AI as tool or trend, but AI as infrastructure, as companion, as identity. XAI, OpenAI, and Google's Gemini all dominate headlines. But what most people don't realize is that Meta's approach is intentionally quieter and just as aggressive. Their internal model, rumored to be called Halo, isn't a chatbot, it's a foundation, a layer that integrates across the Metaverse stack, learning not just from what users type, but how they behave, how they move, what they create. It's not designed to replace people, it's designed to anticipate them. Every morning, Mark reviews an internal dashboard, updates on learning rates, hallucination risks, memory limitations, and new ethical guardrails. Engineers present issues not with flashy decks, but with fast demo loops recorded overnight. The focus isn't on monetization yet, it's on alignment, on making sure the AI isn't just useful but trustworthy, that it knows how to explain its answers, that it remembers in context but forgets on command. These are the rules he wants encoded into its DNA before it reaches the world. And he's not just watching, he's building. He sketches new interface ideas on glass panels. He asks questions that pause meetings. He challenges the team on language nuance, on data bias, on the emotional tone of generated avatars. He doesn't want Halo to be clever, he wants it to be clear. Quietly, he's betting that Meta can build something no one else has dared to. A digital assistant that doesn't pretend to be human, but helps humans be more of themselves. The AI isn't confined to this island either. It's being trained across Meta's vast platforms: Instagram, WhatsApp, Quest, Horizon. Every touchpoint becomes a learning node. And the Island Lab? It's just where the core ideas are born before they're scaled to billions. But even here, inside the heart of Meta's future brain, the pace is intentional. There are no late-night fire drills, no product leaks, just a kind of focused calm that mirrors Zuckerberg's personal evolution. He doesn't need to win the news cycle anymore, he needs to win the timeline. Outside, the waves keep rolling in, but inside Fortress Meta, something else is moving. A new language, a new layer, a new kind of intelligence. And behind it all, Zuckerberg sits not as a coder, not even as a CEO, but as a strategist. One hand in the future, the other grounded in the island dirt. Next door, his kids are learning how to garden, but here he's growing something else. A mind that isn't his, but listens like it is. Chapter 3: Dad Mode Activated, Family, Tech Free Time, and Jiu-Jitsu. By the time the AI team wraps its midday sync, the shift in energy is unmistakable. Screens dim, the feed goes quiet, and Mark Zuckerberg steps out of Fortress Meta and into something entirely different. The midday sun filters through mango trees, and the rustling of leaves gives way to the distant sound of laughter, small, familiar, grounding. His kids are outside, and for the next few hours, tech takes a back seat. This is the part of the day most people don't picture when they think of the man behind Facebook. But here on Kauai, Dad Mode is not a side role, it's a daily one. No assistants hover, no devices interrupt. When Zuckerberg is with his kids, he's fully there, at least as much as every afternoon. There's a window, sometimes 2 hours, sometimes 3, where the entire property goes into what the family calls zero mode. No phones, no tablets, no ambient screens flashing notifications in the background. Just conversation, play, and presence. It's a rule his daughters understand not as punishment, but as rhythm. This is their time, and they guard it. Most days it starts in the backyard, barefoot in the grass. There's a treehouse, a vegetable garden, and a sand pit that doubles as a mini jujitsu mat. Because yes, Mark teaches them jujitsu. Not as a chore, not as discipline, but as a game. He moves gently, deliberately, showing them how to fall, how to breathe, how to find calm inside of pressure. There's something about grappling that strips away titles and tension. It doesn't matter who owns the server farm when you're flat on your back trying to reverse a sweep from your 6-year-old. Sometimes they read afterward, books in Mandarin, Spanish, and English, a nod to the global future he believes they're inheriting. Other times, they bake. Zuckerberg's not a chef, but the dough doesn't care. It's messy, human, and he leans into it. There's flour on his shirt more often than not, and he doesn't seem to mind. The kids lead, he follows. Family dinner is sacred. The dining table is long and made of reclaimed wood, often set outdoors under soft lights. They cook with food grown nearby, most of it from the garden. There are no hired chefs here, at least not when it matters. It's not fancy, but it's consistent. The kind of consistency that kids remember decades later, when they're adults navigating the noise of their own lives. Every now and then, a visiting friend joins, someone from the tech world, a former mentor, an artist passing through. They share stories, not headlines. The kids ask questions, often unfiltered. Zuckerberg listens more than he speaks. Occasionally, he'll break into a quiet smile when one of them says something that mirrors a thought he had earlier that morning during his AI work. That crossover between worlds, the pure and the technical, is where he seems most at home. He knows the narrative around him is complicated: tech billionaire, power broker, metaverse guy. But here, on this patch of green surrounded by the Pacific, he's just a dad, trying to raise curious, kind, resilient kids in a world where none of the old maps apply. And maybe that's the legacy he cares about most. Not the apps, not the stock, but the people who will live in whatever world comes next. People who know how to pause, how to listen, how to breathe, and how to tap out gently when the match is over. Because for all the coding and scaling and building he does, this is the one system he hopes never crashes. His family, his roots, his reason. And tomorrow, like clockwork, the cycle begins again. Sunrise, code, jujitsu, and calm. Chapter 4. Silicon Jungle, Building, Investing, and Staying Out of the Headlines. The palm trees sway just enough to cast moving shadows across the gravel path, and somewhere in the distance, a quiet drone hums, doing perimeter checks or delivering equipment for one of the less public projects tucked away behind the thickets. While most of the world still thinks of Mark Zuckerberg as the guy who built Facebook, the man walking through the underbrush on this Hawaiian property is quietly building something much more intricate. A new kind of network. Not social, but physical, local, resilient, and almost entirely off the radar. What most people miss about Zuckerberg in 2025 is how much of his real work is no longer about headlines. It's about positioning. Years ago, he learned the hard way that every public win comes with 1,000 public critiques. Every press release triggers a backlash. So now he doesn't announce much. Instead, he plants seeds, quietly, strategically, and lets them grow out of sight. The Silicon Jungle, as some of his staff have jokingly started calling it, isn't a nickname for the land, it's a metaphor for his new business approach. A blend of lush, organic intuition and engineered complexity. He's still investing, still scaling, but the style has shifted. Instead of billion-dollar blitzes, he's making dozens of quiet bets. Sustainable AI systems that support low-bandwidth regions, advanced biotech startups developing neuro-integrated prosthetics, water purification technology that doesn't require fossil fuel infrastructure, projects that most VCs wouldn't touch until they're proven. But that's the point. He's not chasing returns, he's building foundations. And then there's the land. Over the past few years, Zuckerberg has acquired not just acreage but influence. Kauai is more than a retreat. It's an experiment. The compound runs on solar and wind, filtered water, regenerative farming. What started as a sanctuary from the noise has evolved into a kind of living lab. It's not flashy, There are no media tours or glossy press photos, but among those who know, it's one of the most advanced off-grid campuses in the world. Hardware is tested here, AI is trained here, privacy is practiced here. Even Meta's investments reflect that same shift. Internally, he's been pushing toward longevity projects, digital memory preservation, low-impact server farms, cognitive bandwidth enhancement. On paper, they sound like moonshots. In reality, they're just the next logical steps. The Metaverse was never meant to stop at VR headsets. That was just version 1. Version 2 looks more like presence, true ambient computing that doesn't ask for your attention but moves with it. And while the world debated Quest sales numbers, Zuckerberg's teams were perfecting how light behaves in volumetric space or how sound can follow you in a mixed reality forest.
There's something deeply intentional about how he's staying out of the headlines while building tools that could define the next era. He still shows up for the big moments, earnings calls, keynote launches, but he doesn't linger. The version of Mark Zuckerberg the world once knew, the suited-up tech mogul defending platforms in front of Congress, is now rarely seen. In his place, a man in a hoodie, hands calloused from surfboards and jiu-jitsu mats, sketching server architecture on a whiteboard next to a garden of papaya trees. This isn't retirement, it's reinvention. Not pulling back, but pulling deeper. Deeper into problems worth solving, into technologies that don't just scale, but sustain. Into a way of working that values quiet results over loud rollouts. If you want to see what the future looks like, don't look where the cameras are pointed. Look just beyond the reach of headlines. That's where Zuckerberg is operating now, in the shade of his own silicon jungle, quietly designing systems that will outlive the noise. Chapter 5. Escape Velocity. Surfing, Meditation, and Mind Training. It's late afternoon on Kauai, and the island begins to slip into its golden hour. The air softens, the ocean deepens into a calm steel blue, and the rhythm of the day slows without ever fully stopping. This is when Mark Zuckerberg reappears, not as the CEO, not as the builder, but as a man unplugging from velocity to protect it. For all the layers of infrastructure and artificial intelligence he navigates daily, this time of day belongs to something older, simpler, and much harder to master: stillness. Out here, Zuckerberg finds a kind of fuel that doesn't come from data. Sometimes it's as basic as paddling out into the surf. He doesn't ride massive waves or post flashy clips. His surfing is quieter, more like moving meditation. Just the board, the break, and the current beneath him. No gear, no tech, just breath and patience. It's where the chatter of business and responsibility falls away. Because in the ocean, no amount of strategic planning matters. You either feel the wave or you miss it. You're either present or you're underwater. That theme, presence, runs through everything he's doing in 2025. It's not about stepping back from ambition. It's about sharpening focus. Surfing leads to meditation, and meditation has become non-negotiable. Twice a day, every day, without fail. Sometimes in a shaded grove near his house, sometimes inside a stone room designed to block electromagnetic interference, a kind of sensory neutral zone where thought and silence can stretch uninterrupted. He doesn't call it mindfulness. He doesn't romanticize it. He treats it like training, as essential as physical fitness or strategic briefings. People close to him say the transformation over the past few years has been dramatic. Not louder, not flashier, just more precise. He talks slower, pauses longer, doesn't feel the need to fill every silence. These aren't branding moves. They're consequences of routine, the kind of discipline that builds endurance, not hype. While some billionaires play with legacy in public, Zuckerberg has gotten comfortable with invisibility. You won't see his surf sessions on Instagram. You won't hear about his retreats until they're over. He's not hiding, he's just operating on a wavelength most people aren't tuned into. His schedule reflects it. Evenings, unless a rare emergency hits, are screen-free, not just for his kids, but for himself.
No scrolling, no meetings, just movement or quiet. On weekends, he's known to go off-grid entirely, disconnecting from Meta's core systems and letting his trusted lieutenants steer the ship. That trust didn't come easy, but it's what allows him to detach. Because detachment, paradoxically, is what fuels the next leap. When your daily life is filled with noise, you lose altitude. Zuckerberg, in his island rhythm, is aiming for escape velocity. It's not about being unbothered, it's about being unavailable to the unnecessary. The habits, the expectations, the reactive patterns that once tethered him to a certain version of success. In their place, a new model is emerging. One built not just on productivity, but on clarity. One where surfing at sunset or sitting silently for 20 minutes isn't a luxury. It's design, a functional part of staying ahead. Because when you're working on problems that stretch decades into the future, how humans connect, how consciousness and code might merge, you need more than funding. You need space. Mental, physical, spiritual. And for Zuckerberg, that space looks like peeling papayas with his daughters in the kitchen, then slipping into the ocean without a single device on him. He knows what the outside world thinks, that he's either gone reclusive or gone eccentric. But that's the thing about escape velocity. From the ground, it always looks a little strange. Until you realize he's not drifting away. He's accelerating, quietly, deliberately, towards something entirely different. Chapter 6. The Long Game. Legacy, Privacy, and Zuckerberg's Next Act. As the days move slower on the island and the noise of the mainland fades with every crashing wave, one question still follows Mark Zuckerberg, no matter how far he drifts from Silicon Valley. What's the long game? What does a man who's built one of the most powerful communication tools in history want to leave behind, not just in quarterly earnings or product launches, but in memory, in impact, in shape? By 2025, Zuckerberg isn't chasing influence, he already has it, quietly, firmly. He doesn't need headlines to steer the future anymore. He's built systems that do that automatically, algorithms that amplify, networks that scale themselves, and technologies that shape how billions think, speak, and remember. But legacy in its truest form isn't about volume, it's about direction. And in the quiet of Kauai, where surfboards lean against the wall next to whiteboards filled with quantum logic diagrams, Zuckerberg is thinking deeper. Privacy, once a word that clung to every Facebook article like a shadow, is no longer a public crisis, it's a personal mission. Not to fix the past, but to build something more durable, more dignified. The meta of 2025 isn't just tweaking settings, it's redefining digital boundaries. He's invested in privacy-preserving AI, decentralized identity systems, and encryption layers so seamless they work invisibly. It's not flashy, and he doesn't overpromise, but it's deliberate, a shift, an answer, not to critics, but to himself. Legacy also shows up in how he parents. The garden routines, the tech-free dinners, the questions he asks his kids at night, big ones like what did you notice today that no one else saw, or what would you build if nothing could stop you? He's not molding successors, he's planting possibility, not because he expects them to inherit his platforms, but because he hopes they outgrow them entirely. That's the clearest indicator of where his focus has moved from empire to environment. Not just what he's building, but who he's building it for. He's still involved, of course, deeply, meetings, memos, strategy calls, but the tone has changed. There's less urgency in his voice now, more precision, less obsession with the now, and more clarity about the far off. When he talks about the metaverse, it's not with the fanfare of launch events, it's with the quiet conviction of someone who knows that real change doesn't show up in a demo reel, it unfolds across generations. Even his estate, sprawling and fortified, isn't just a fortress, it's a model. A place where energy is renewable, systems are autonomous, and data stays local. A beta version of a life that doesn't require constant connection to thrive. A controlled experiment in what post-platform life might look like. And maybe that's the most telling clue of all. Because Zuckerberg doesn't just want to create tools anymore. He wants to create conditions for thought, for learning, for growth. The kind of legacy that doesn't rely on being remembered, but on having shifted something quietly, permanently. A culture, a cadence, a way of being online that reflects the best parts of being human, not just the loudest. So what's next? Maybe nothing public, maybe no grand unveil, Maybe just more building in silence, more thinking in circles beneath palm trees, more mornings where the first meeting is with the ocean, not a boardroom. And that's the point. Legacy isn't always loud. Sometimes it's built in the quiet, where the world can't see it coming, where the future begins not with code, but with intention. Zuckerberg's next act isn't a new product, it's a new posture, a long game that's less about dominating attention and more about designing what lasts. And when the rest of us finally look up from the screen, we may find ourselves living in something he's already spent years shaping, just out of frame, just ahead of us, and quietly waiting.